I grew up with two childhood friends who would become the male leads. Knowing they'd both eventually fall for the female lead, I chose to watch from the sidelines with a smile. I watched them blow millions at my family's casino for her. I watched them bid sky-high prices on my ordinary jewelry, just to make her happy. I thought I could keep counting money, while enjoying their messy love triangle drama. But then the way they looked at me changed. The first time I met Emma was at an exclusive VIP club. I was leaning against the wall, bored out of my mind, waiting for the elevator. Two people next to me were getting way too cozy, and it was annoying me. I glanced over and saw this greasy, middle-aged guy with gold chains all over him, holding a drunk young girl. This kind of thing wasn't rare in high society circles, that this girl was wearing a school uniform. I looked at her coldly. She was beautiful and delicate, eyes wet with tears, face flushed in an unnatural way, like a white camellia blooming slowly in winter. The middle-aged man's fat hands were reaching under her school uniform, but she seemed completely out of it, mumbling, let go. I need to get to my part-time job to pay for tuition. The man laughed disgustingly. You come with me to meet the big boss today. If you behave well, get tuition. Someone will even pluck the stars from the sky for you. I watched silently for a while. When the elevator doors slowly opened, I reached out and stopped them. Hey, mister. Administer medicine and assaulting minors is illegal. The man looked shocked that someone would interfere. I gently pulled the girl into my arms. He stared for a moment, then exploded. What little flirt dares to ruin my business? You want to talk law with me? I could literally stool on the police chief's head, and they wouldn't dare touch me. Get lost now, or I'll have to send you up there, too. To apologize to the big boss. He was about to get physical. I smirked, and with one quick move, nap. I broke his wrist bone, holding the girl loosely. I smiled. Which amazing big boss are you talking about? Give me a name. I'd love to see. Which? Nobody? I don't know. Maybe my tone was too arrogant, but his already painted face went even wider. Anyone who could get into this club was either rich or powerful. But even among the elite, there were different levels. It all came down to whose golden spoon was more prestigious. He gritted his teeth stubbornly. Who the heck are you? I lifted my chin slightly, perfectly copying the spoiled rich kid attitude, and said two words. Sophia Sterling. The moment I spoke, that man instantly transformed from a snarling pig into a drowning quail. His shoulders shook. Then he kept bowing to me. Miss Sterling, I was so rude just now. Before he could finish, I cut him off coldly. Don't bother. You can. Submit your medical bills to the Sterling family for reimbursement. The man shook even harder. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. If you wouldn't dare, then get lost watching his almost panicked escape. I smirked mockingly. I looked down at the girl in my arms about to wake her up. Hey, are you okay? Before I could finish, she frowned in discomfort. The next second, she threw up all over me. I took a deep breath, feeling my temples throb. I grabbed her chin roughly, barely restraining the urge to strangle her. Are you trying to die? I was just bored and feeling sympathetic, playing the hero for fun. If I'd known I'd end up with my Balenciaga couture covered in vomit, I would have walked straight into that elevator. But the moment my fingers touched her, a strange mechanical voice echoed in my head. Ding. Female lead is online. In an instant, my mind was flooded with flashback scenes. This girl, Emma, was the innocent female lead of a competitive romance novel, like a piece of pure fragile glass. The male leads surrounding her were the two men I'd known since childhood, my childhood friends, male lead Daniel Harrison and second male lead Ryan Mitchell. And I was the evil supporting character, because I hated how easily the female lead attracted everyone's attention. I constantly opposed her. In the end, I met a tragic fate, despised by everyone out of the Sterling family, with nothing but a broken mat, and spent my final days in a mental hospital.
Pure torture, pure melodrama.
I was lost in thought when a familiar, cold voice came from behind Sophie. I turned around to see Daniel walking toward me. Why aren't you going up? He was in a suit radiating noble coldness. When he looked at me, his gaze unconsciously swept over the barely conscious Emma beside me. I was about to speak when Emma suddenly threw herself at Daniel. She moved too fast, and Daniel could only stretch out his arms to catch her waist. Maybe the warmth of his bosom gave the girl a sense of safety. She struggled in Daniel's arms a few times, then closed her eyes and fainted.
Me.
Truly the male and female leads. Even their first meeting was so dramatically explosive. Daniel still had some gentleman's manners. He looked down at Emma in his arms, and at the disgusting vomit on my clothes. After hesitating briefly, he said gently, I'll have someone help you clean up. No need. I rubbed my temples irritably. Go upstairs and tell Ryan I'm not coming tonight. You guys have fun. Daniel didn't say anything, just nodded and said flatly, "And then I'm not going up either." I glanced at him questioningly. Daniel bent his arm and lifted Emma completely, saying without expression, "I'll take her home as the legitimate heir." Personally trained by the Sterling family, I'd always had good adaptability. That night, I accepted the fact that I was the evil supporting character. Since opposing Emma led to bad endings, I decided to keep my distance.
Besides,
Thinking about how I would actually fight with an innocent girl over two men seemed ridiculous and laughable. Admittedly, as the heirs of the Harrison and Mitchell families, Daniel was brilliant but cold-hearted, like a noble distant flower on a high peak. Ryan was the complete opposite, rebellious and unruly famous playboy in our circle. Even my mother would occasionally pull me aside and quietly ask, "Which one do you like?" And I would usually just smile speechlessly. The training of high society. Heirs always followed the law of the jungle. The elite world was ever-changing with new money emerging every year. Rather than saying Daniel, Ryan and I were innocent childhood sweethearts, it was more accurate to say we were three wolves who grew up together, with slightly closer relationships. When necessary, we could devour each other to strengthen ourselves.
so most of the time,
I just smiled and watched their melodramatic love triangle. As long as it didn't interfere with my business, I didn't mind treating it all as entertainment. Of course, I'd occasionally profit from them, like bringing them to the Sterling family's offshore casino, watching them blow millions for Emma. The uglier their faces got, and the higher they stacked their chips, the happier I became. Or watching them bid astronomical prices on my ordinary jewelry, just to please Emma. When I went on stage as the host to present flowers, Ryan's face was livid as he gritted his teeth. "I made a killing again, you odious girl." Meanwhile, Daniel just shook his head with a helpless smile. I had a sly smile on my lips, winking at them, but then met Emma's gaze. Her eyes were gentle but complex. I could read envy, awkwardness, and another unclear emotion in them. I paused, then symbolically hugged her and handed her the bouquet. "Congratulations." I thought I'd keep enjoying watching them play this triangle game until my 18th birthday party. My grand 18th birthday celebration was held at a luxury hotel
controlled by the Sterling family.
The Sterlings invited almost every important person in the city. In the spacious ballroom, flowers and jewels sparkled and celebrities and nobles gathered. My father officially transferred several subsidiary companies under Sterling Group to my name. I wore the elegant dress my mother chose for me, blew out the birthday candles under everyone's gaze, displayed the large check I'd saved up over the years to donate to charity, and gave a tearful speech about my grand ideals as an adult. I'd known since childhood that acting and etiquette were required courses in my life. So even though I felt somewhat bored and uninterested at that moment, I still naturally showed a happy smile, performing until the very end of my coming-of-age ceremony. However, just as I was holding the microphone, giving my polite speech, piercing screams suddenly erupted from the audience. Along with it came the dull sound of fists hitting flesh. Everyone was shocked and looked toward the sound. My two childhood friends. Ryan was pressing Daniel down, veins bulging on his forehead, throwing punch after punch at Daniel's face. The crystal chandeliers seemed to rattle with the force of the punch. Gasps rippled through the glittering crowd. For a moment, I just stood there on the raised dais, microphone in hand, my perfectly rehearsed smile frozen on my face. My speech about compassion, legacy, and graceful adulthood died in my throat. Chaos erupted. Security rushed forward, but they hesitated, recognizing the two young masters. Ryan, his usually playful face contorted with a rage I'd never seen, was shouting, his words slicing through the stunned silence. "You think you can just decide for her? For us? You cold, calculating bastard." Daniel, pinned beneath him, wasn't fighting back. Blood trickled from a split lip, marring his pristine, aloof composure. His eyes, however, were locked not on Ryan but on something or someone in the crowd. I followed his gaze and saw Emma, standing a few feet away, her hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She looked like a shattered porcelain doll, the center of this devastating storm. Of course, I thought, a cold, familiar detachment settling over me. Asterisk the climax of the first act. The two princes brawl publicly over the pauper princess. And here I am, the sidelined heiress, holding a microphone. Asterisk. But something was off. The script in my memories didn't have the scene at my birthday. It was supposed to happen at a charity gala months later. The timeline was shifting. A sliver of ice traced my spine. My father's voice, low and commanding, cut through the noise. "Restrain them.
Now."
This time, security moved, pulling a thrashing Ryan off Daniel. The crowd parted, whispers swirling like toxic perfume.
Skandal.
Disgrace. The Sterling girls' ruined party. Asterisk. I lowered the microphone. The performance was over. The real drama had begun, and I was no longer just a spectator in the wings. I was the host, and my stage was being torn apart. I walked down the steps, the train of my gown whispering against the marble. All eyes turned to me. Pity, curiosity, schadenfreude. I ignored them. I stopped a few feet from the trio. Ryan, chest heaving, being held back by two guards. Daniel, straightening his jacket with bruised dignity, dabbing his lip with a handkerchief, and Emma, trembling between them, the invisible force that had collided these two titans. My ballroom, I said, my voice cool and clear, carrying without the microphone, is not a boxing ring. If you have personal disputes, take them outside. You're ruining the carpet. Ryan stared at me, his fury momentarily redirected. Sophia, this isn't, he was going to— I don't care, I interrupted, slicing my gaze from him to Daniel. Whatever this is, it has nothing to do with my birthday, my family, or this event. You both owe me and everyone here an apology for turning a celebration into a circus. Daniel met my eyes. There was no apology in his gaze. Instead, something simmered beneath the usual ice, a frustration, a defiance that was new. It became your business the moment it happened under your roof, Sophia, he said quietly, the words only for me and Ryan. Emma sobbed. I'm so sorry, Sophia. It's all my fault. They were arguing about who should drive me home after, because I wasn't feeling well, and then, she dissolved into fresh tears. Drive her home. Over that, they'd come to blows in front of high society. It was ludicrous. It was the plot. And it was already affecting my world tangibly. My mother appeared at my side, her smile strained but impeccable. Darling, perhaps we should move to the terrace for the fireworks? A little fresh air will do us all good. She was a master of damage control. I nodded. An excellent idea. I looked at Ryan and Daniel. You too. My study.
Now.
Unless you want the story to be the only thing the tabloids talk about tomorrow. I turned to Emma, who flinched under my gaze. Someone please see Miss Emma home. She seems done well. As staff gently guided a weeping Emma away, and the crowd, under my mother's smooth direction, began to drift toward the terrace, I led the way to my father's private study on the second floor. The silence in the opulent, book-lined room was heavy. Ryan slammed the door shut behind us. Are you happy now, Sophia? Playing the cool, unaffected hostess while he jabbed a finger at Daniel, tries to manipulate everything and everyone. Daniel leaned against my father's desk, examining his bruised knuckles. I was merely stating the logical choice.
You were in no state to drive, Ryan.
You'd been drinking. I had one glass. You just wanted an excuse to be alone with her. And you? I said, pouring myself a glass of whiskey from my father's decanter, ignoring the fact I'd just turned 18. Both acted like spoiled children who'd never been told no. Do you have any idea what you've done? The sterling name is now attached to a pathetic, juvenile brawl. My father spent a fortune on this night. For me. The last words came out sharper than I intended. They both looked at me, momentarily chastened. I saw the flicker of our childhood then, the times I'd scolded them for tracking mud into the mansion, for breaking a precious vase during a game. But we weren't children anymore. The stakes were different. Why her? The question left my lips before I could stop it. I took a sip of the whiskey, letting the burn steady me. She's a pretty girl from an ordinary background. I've seen you both with models, heiresses, artists. What is it about Emma that makes you lose your minds? Ryan ran a hand through his hair, the anger draining, leaving behind a bewildered exhaustion. She's not like them. She's real. She doesn't want anything. She's just good. Daniel was silent for a long moment. She sees people, he said finally, his voice low. Not their titles or net worth. She needs protection. The world will eat her alive. I almost laughed. The world will eat her alive, and yet, here they were, the world's most eligible predators, fighting over who got to keep the lamb. The irony was thick enough to choke on. She needs to learn to protect herself, I said flatly. And you too, protecting her looks an awful lot like possession. It's unattractive, and it's bad for business. I set the glass down. Here are the new rules. You will not involve my family's properties, my events, or my name in your courtship drama. You will settle your disputes privately, like the grown men you're supposed to be. And you will both issue a public, joint statement tomorrow, claiming it was a misunderstanding fueled by too much champagne and expressing your profound regret to the Sterling family. My father's PR team will draft it. You will sign it. Ryan scowled. You can't order us around, Sophia. I can, I said, meeting his gaze evenly. Because if you don't, I will make sure every casino, every club, every luxury dealer in the city knows that Ryan Mitchell and Daniel Harrison are volatile liabilities. Your credit lines at my establishments will be the first to freeze. Try explaining that to your boards. Daniel's eyes narrowed. This was the language he understood: power, consequence, leverage. That's quite ruthless, Sophia. It's practical, I corrected. You dragged me into your mess. Now you deal with the cleanup my way. I walked to the door. The fireworks are starting. I suggest you both compose yourselves, then leave through the back. I have a party to salvage. I didn't wait for their response. As I stepped back into the hallway, the muffled pop of fireworks beginning outside, I felt the strange mechanical voice in my head didn't activate. No new plot points, no warnings. Just silence. The story was off the rails, and I was holding the detonator. The weeks that followed were tense. The joint apology was issued. The tabloids feasted on it for a day before moving on to the next scandal. But the dynamic between us four had irrevocably cracked. I threw myself into managing the subsidiary companies my father had given me. It was a welcome distraction: numbers, strategies, profits. Real power, not the fictional kind that revolved around a girl's tears. I avoided events where I knew Emma would be. Yet, she had a way of appearing. At a gallery opening Ryan dragged me to make amends. She was there, wide-eyed, admiring a painting Ryan promptly bought for her. At a high-stakes polo match Daniel invited me to discuss a merger possibility. She was serving refreshments as a part-time waitress, of course. Daniel spent the match watching her stumble under the weight of a drinks tray more than he watched the game. Each encounter was a fresh, silent abrasion. Emma would look at me with those complex eyes, gratitude mixed with a hint of fear, and that strange, unreadable emotion. She tried to talk to me, to thank me again for the night at the club, to ask about my work. I'd be polite, distant, and extract myself as quickly as possible. The boys, their behavior towards me began to change in subtle, unnerving ways. Ryan's teasing, which used to be about my ruthless business deals or my expensive tastes, now had a sharper, more personal edge. "What's wrong, Sophia? Jealous no one's fighting over you," he'd say with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes when I declined an invitation to join them and Emma for dinner. Daniel became more observant. He'd show up at my office unannounced, under the guise of business, but his questions would stray. "You've been distant," he stated once, watching me sign documents. "Is it because of Emma?" I didn't look up. "I've been busy, Daniel. Unlike some, I have actual responsibilities." "She thinks you hate her." That made me put my pen down. "I don't hate her. I barely know her. I simply have no interest in the narrative you've all constructed. My life doesn't revolve around your romantic entanglements." He studied me, that new, frustrating intensity in his gaze. "It used to revolve around us. The three of us. We were children," I said simply, the finality in my voice surprising even me. The climax of this unsettling shift came at the annual Sterling Foundation Gala, our family's most prestigious philanthropic event. It was my first time co-hosting with my father. I wore a severe, stunning black gown, my hair up in a sleek knot. I was every inch the Sterling heiress, in control. Emma was there, on Ryan's arm. He'd sponsored a table. She wore a simple lavender dress, looking painfully out of place amidst the diamond-studded crowd. Daniel was across the room, representing the Harrison Foundation, but his attention was a laser pointed at their table. During the auction, a rare first edition of The Great Gatsby, donated from our private library, came up. Bidding was brisk. Ryan, with a showman's grin, jumped in, clearly aiming to win it for Emma, the literature student. Daniel, coolly, began to counterbid. My jaw tightened. This was my event, not their playground. The bids climbed into the absurd. The crowd watched, enthralled by this renewed, public rivalry. Emma looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. I stood from my place at the head table and walked to the auctioneer's podium. I gently took the gavel from his hand. The room fell silent. "The Sterling Foundation thanks Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Harrison for their enthusiastic generosity," I said, my voice smooth as silk over steel. "However, in the spirit of the evening, which is about charity, not competition, I'm going to exercise the host's privilege." I looked directly at Ryan, then Daniel. "The final bid stands with Mr. Mitchell. But," I turned to the audience, "I will personally match that bid, and the book will be donated in the name of both the Mitchell and Harrison families to the city's public library, with a plaque commemorating their joint contribution to literacy. A fitting end to any misunderstandings." It was a masterstroke. It robbed them of their victory, framed their rivalry as cooperation, and made me look magnanimous. The room broke into applause. Ryan's face was purple. Daniel's was an unreadable mask. Emma stared at me, her expression a mixture of awe and dawning comprehension. After the gala, as I supervised the cleanup, Daniel found me on the empty terrace. "That was brilliantly manipulative," he said, his tone not entirely disapproving. "It was damage control," I replied, watching the city lights. "You're always controlling the damage, Sophia." "Our damage?" He stepped closer. "Why do you care so much about what we do?" Because your chaos spills onto me, I snapped, finally turning to him. I have a name, a legacy, a business to protect. Your little war over that girl is a liability I can't afford. Do you think this is a game? It's my life. And what about your life, Sophia? He asked, his voice dropping. Beyond the control and the damage? What do you want? The question startled me. In the original plot, the evil Sophia wanted the male leads. That was her driving force. But I didn't. I never had. I wanted stability, power on my own terms, freedom from this ridiculous script. I said slowly, to not be a supporting character in someone else's story. Daniel looked at me for a long, long time. The cold moonlight etched the planes of his face. The bruise from Ryan's fist was long gone, but a new kind of tension lingered. Who said you were? He finally murmured, before turning and walking away. The true test came a month later. One of my subsidiaries, a luxury hotel chain, was hit by a coordinated smear campaign alleging poor labor practices. The source was a shadowy online news outlet. My investigation traced the funding back to a shell company and then, to my cold horror, to a small but significant financial link to Ryan Mitchell's venture capital firm. Confronting him in his sleek, modern office, I threw the documents on his desk. Explain. Ryan paled as he read them. Sophia, I swear I didn't know. This is one of 100 funds I'm invested in. It's managed independently. Is it? I cut in, my voice trembling with a fury I rarely showed. Or are you so distracted playing knight to your damsel that you've lost control of your own empire? Or worse, I leaned forward. Is this a petty revenge for the gala? For me clipping your wings in front of your precious Emma? He flinched as if struck.
No.
God, Sophia, do you really think I'd do that to you? To us. The raw hurt in his eyes gave me pause. This wasn't the playboy, nor the rival. This was Ryan, the boy who'd shared my secret candy stash, who'd taken the blame when we crashed my father's vintage car. I don't know what to think anymore, I said, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a profound weariness. Everything is tangled up. Business. Friendship. Her. Just then, Daniel walked in unannounced. His gaze swept from my stricken face to the documents on Ryan's desk. I heard about the smear campaign, he said to me. Then he looked at Ryan. And I traced the secondary financial pipeline. It leads to a competitor of yours, Ryan. They used your fund's connection as a red herring, hoping we'd turn on each other. The relief that washed over me was immediately followed by a chilling clarity. We'd turn on each other, the plot, or life, or some cruel mixture of both, was still trying to pit us against one another, to isolate me. See, Ryan said, voice thick. I wouldn't hurt you, Sophia. But the damage was done. The trust, once implicit, was now fissured. And Daniel had been investigating on my behalf, without my asking. Thank you, Daniel, I said quietly, gathering the papers. My hands weren't quite steady. As I left, Daniel followed me into the hall. Sophia, wait. He reached out, his fingers brushing my wrist. A rare, deliberate touch. You're shouldering too much alone. You always have. But you don't have to. I looked up at him. The concern in his eyes was real, but it was entangled with everything else, with his obsession with Emma, with our complicated past, with the power struggles of our present. Don't I whispered. It seems like the moment I let my guard down, the world, or your world, comes crashing in. The crisis was averted. The competitor was exposed and ruined by a joint effort of Sterling, Mitchell, and Harrison legal teams. It was a show of force that reminded the city of our Trinity's enduring power. But internally, the fracture deepened. I decided I needed space, a complete escape. I announced I was taking a 6-month sabbatical to personally oversee the expansion of our Asian market portfolio, based in Singapore. It was a legitimate business move, but everyone knew it was an exile. The night before my departure, Ryan and Daniel came to my penthouse, separately, and said the same thing in different ways. Don't go. I need to, was my only answer to both. Emma, surprisingly, sent me a handwritten note. Asterisk, I'm sorry for all the trouble. I never meant any of it. I hope you find what you're looking for far away. Asterisk, it was so earnest it made my teeth ache. Singapore was a revelation. The distance was liberating. I built a new team, negotiated fierce deals, dated a brilliant, uncomplicated tech CEO who knew nothing of my past dramas. For the first time, I felt like Sophia Sterling, not the heiress, the childhood friend, or the potential villainess.
Just me.
But the past has long tentacles. News from home filtered through. Ryan had gotten into a near-fatal car race, allegedly after a fight with Emma. Daniel had withdrawn from several high-profile projects, becoming more reclusive. And Emma had been accepted into a prestigious overseas study program. Alone, the mechanical voice in my head remained silent. The plot, it seemed, was crumbling without my active presence as the antagonist. 5 months into my sabbatical, I received an urgent, joint summons. Not from my father, but from the boards of both the Mitchell and Harrison groups. Ryan's reckless behavior and Daniel's disengagement were causing serious instability. Their share prices were dropping. The Trinity was faltering, and it was affecting the entire ecosystem. They believed only I could reason with them. I was the linchpin. Reluctantly, I returned. I found Ryan in a downtown loft, surrounded by empty bottles and the ghosts of his wild energy. He looked hollowed out. "She left," he said, not looking at me. "She said she couldn't be the reason we destroyed ourselves. She said she saw the way you looked at us that night of your birthday. Not with jealousy, but with disappointment. Like we were breaking something precious." I sat down beside him, saying nothing. "You were, he continued, voice rough. "We were breaking us. The three of us. And you were the only one who saw it. The only one who tried to stop it." He finally looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "I miss us, sophomore. I miss you." I found Daniel at the old Harrison estate, in the library where we'd done homework as kids. He was staring at a chessboard, set but not played. "Checkmate was always inevitable with you," he said without preamble. "You saw the whole board. I only saw my pieces, my strategy. Emma, she was never a piece on my board. She was a distraction from it. From the fact that the only opponent who ever truly challenged me was you." His words hung in the dusty sunlight. "All this time," he said, finally meeting my gaze, "I thought I was competing with Ryan for her. But I was competing with you. For your attention. For your respect. For a place in the world you were building for yourself. One that didn't seem to include me anymore." The revelations were seismic. The love triangle, the core of the original novel, was a facade. Beneath it, their connection to me, complex, competitive, deeply rooted, was the real anchor, and they had nearly shattered it in their pursuit of a storyline that was never meant to be theirs alone. I didn't have a grand speech. I simply said, "The boards are worried. Your families are worried. I'm worried." Using the word felt foreign, but true. You need to come back. To yourselves. To your responsibilities.
And to you?
Ryan asked later, when we were all in the same room for the first time in months, my penthouse, the neutral territory. "There is no back to me," I said, pouring 3 glasses of the whiskey we'd stolen as teenagers. "That version of us is gone. We're not kids. But we can build something new. As allies. As the 3 most powerful people in this city who, for some insane reason, understand each other better than anyone else." It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. It was a negotiation. A new treaty. We agreed to a formal, public business alliance, the Sterling Mitchell-Harrison Partnership, focusing on sustainable development and tech innovation. It made headlines, stabilizing the markets instantly. We also agreed to keep our personal lives strictly separate. Ryan needed to grow up. Daniel needed to reconnect with his purpose.
And I
needed to define my life on my own terms, not in reaction to theirs. Emma sent a congratulatory email from abroad. She was doing well, she said, finding her own strength. She hoped we were all happy. The message was kind, final. The female lead had written her own exit from our story. Years later, the partnership is the most formidable entity in the business world. Ryan, now a surprisingly astute and responsible CEO, is engaged to a sharp-tongued human rights lawyer who terrifies and delights him. Daniel, the visionary strategist, has found a quiet passion for architectural preservation. He shares his life with a brilliant, calm historian who appreciates his depth. And I, Sophia Sterling, am the undisputed head of Sterling Global. I never married. I have lovers when I please. I have art collections, philanthropic causes, and a quiet seaside villa where I go to read and be utterly alone. One evening, at the opening of a museum wing we funded, the 3 of us stand together on a balcony. The cameras flash below, capturing the iconic trio. We clink glasses, water for all of us now. "Remember when you puked on my Balenciaga?" I say to Ryan, a genuine smile on my lips. He groans. "You'll never let me forget it." Daniel shakes his head, a faint, real smile touching his eyes. "And then you broke a man's wrist. My knight in shining armor." We laugh, the sound easy, unburdened. The ghosts of the past are just that, ghosts. The messy love triangle, the doomed villainous plot, it all feels like a strange, shared dream from another lifetime. "I never did thank you," Daniel says, his voice serious for a moment. "For seeing through it all. For not letting us destroy ourselves." I look out at the city we've shaped, each in our own way, together and apart. "I was just saving my own skin," I say lightly. "And the carpet." But we all know it was more. I didn't just watch from the sidelines. I stepped into the chaos, not to claim a prince, but to reclaim my own story. And in doing so, I perhaps saved theirs too. The original novel's ending, the mental hospital, the desolation, is a distant, impossible echo. My story had no predetermined finale. It was, and is, mine to write. And as I stand between the two men who were once my childhood friends, then my headaches, and now my most trusted allies, I know the only drama I'm interested in is the one I choose to create. The rest is just noise, and I've learned to listen to my own voice above it all.